What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with the one, the only Mort Jensen of NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of Forbes fame, of HBO Max fame now, and also, most notably, of OnlyFans celebrity,
Yes.
Mr. Mort Jensen. Before we talk, we're here to talk about just extensions, all signed by they're not all conventional rookie extensions because a couple of them came from second-round picks or undrafted guys. But we're going to get into what we think of the extensions as well as talk about the players who did not sign extensions because sometimes that is just as fascinating. We haven't had a chance to do that. We thought it'd be a good time to do it now as we're still mainlining the start of the NBA season. Now I can ask you, Mr. Mort Jensen, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you. This is one of the first times that I've actually been healthy over the course of like a month or so, because remember when I was just a mess, to be honest with you, just a mess. That was like for a month and a half. Now I've been healthy and feeling good for like a month. So obviously, as I say this out loud, I just jinxed my ass. But no, I'm having a blast. The NBA season is underway now. Got a new job, as you alluded to, so can't complain.
Well, we're here for the complaints, so try and find one.
No, well, that's gonna be tough, man. It's good vibes.
You want to complain about the Bulls' number one ranked defense? Go ahead.
You know what? Honestly, I don't have a lot to complain about with the Bulls because I've noticed something. If we want to get there a little bit,
This is not. That's not what this podcast is. We need to stay on topic.
Wow.
What I actually wanted to ask you was before we dig into the extensions, like go extension by extension. Did you notice any themes coming out of these negotiations or any thoughts that you had like just coming out of the rookie extension season about where these types of transactions are headed?
It's funny you ask that because I wrote about that over at Yahoo Sports, and basically
It's almost like I might have read it and then
you did. Well, now I'm flattered. Technically, we don't know with absolute certainty whether, two players picking up the qualifying offer is going to have like a sort of effect on the future market. We don't know that. It depends on the amount of money being available and whatnot, but it does feel like restricted free agency players are realizing just the deadness of it, that it's just no longer a viable option for them to go in and earn their money. So they seem to be split into two camps. One, there's the camp that just goes, I'm going to bet on myself so much that I'm going to be like a max contract player, so I become, quote unquote, unavoidable. The second camp is the Nikola Jovic camp, where you just go, I'll sign whatever you put in front of me because I just don't want to go through that whole thing with the uncertainty and you squeezing me and everything involved there. So it's going to be fascinating to see over the next couple of years how players adjust to this market, because how long has it been since we've seen like a true offer sheet? Like 3 off seasons ago? Somewhere along those lines?
Does the Paul Reed offer sheet count?
Is that real?
It was a real one.
Was a real one, yeah. But like, it's something that has changed the market a little bit. Like, the raw idea of restricted free agency is nice because it basically means you can go out and set your own market. You can get paid what you're hopefully looking to get paid. That option is fully taken away now. So, like, what is the incentive of players to go into that market, which is something I think is a fascinating question moving forward.
Do you think if they decrease the amount of time, and I know they already have, but decrease the amount of time incumbent teams have to match, if that would do any? What if it was just this hour or 2 hour clock? And so people are giving out offer sheets like 3 o'clock in the morning, and an alarm goes off somewhere in Charlotte's headquarters that Brandon Miller, when he's a restricted free agent, got this offer sheet from Detroit. I'm just pulling stuff out of my butt right now.
I love that.
I feel like that would make for a ton of interesting anecdotes, but I do wonder if you remove the time or how much time these teams have to match, would that make another team more inclined? Because that's part of the other thing too, is a lot of free agency stuff isn't happening, so I actually think that this excuse is stupid now, but where you don't want to tie up your cap space or your money, like let's say you're offering an exception in someone else, knowing you're not going to get them. And I understand that, but then it's also, what moves are you sitting on at this point when you look at what's become a free agency in general?
It's super interesting. I want that. I think we should have one off season where we just go absolutely nuts. Like one hour to match, basically. That's a rule.
And they can only be given out between, like, we'll make like a certain window, like between 12 p.m. Eastern time and like 6 p.m. Like just a 6-hour window, and that's where all the RFA business needs to happen.
Boom. There we go. See, now that's actually putting some mustard on the whole thing. And more to it, the month before, we need to do something even more drastic just to get everyone wild. The NBA draft lottery 1 hour before the draft.
Oh, that would, I guess there's not a ton of transactions. That would kill the draft day transaction market, though.
But it would be fun. Like, imagine a team just coming up from like, oh, we're expecting to draft 12. Oh, now we're picking 1. Like,
I mean, it's easy when there's a Cooper Flag in the draft, but you're putting them in a weird position where if it was the year before, where it was, well, we're going to take Sar, Risache, or who are you going to take there? I don't know if I would be a fan of that one. And also the problem with my window one, you're encouraging tampering at that point because these contracts in theory can't be negotiated within like an hour.
Right, because no one tampers anyway.
Right. And so I care about the integrity of the NBA. But when I was going through these extensions too, because I do think what's happening with restricted free agency is kind of just a larger sign of what's happened to the NBA offseason in general, is that there's less transacting on the free agency market. I don't know what brings it back. I thought, you and I have actually talked about this, I think. I thought we'd get to a point where the money would just matter so much that players wouldn't be betting on their own under. I mean, I thought the money would just matter so much that these guys would want to hit free agency, and it doesn't. Maybe it will happen, but Mort, the money's gotten pretty insane, and we're not seeing it happen.
No, and look, I get it. Like, players want the security, they want the extensions, and that's why these superstars, like, remember back in the day when it was sort of this thing where I want to experience free agency. I want to be wined and dined, like LeBron James going on his tour in 2010.
DeAndre Jordan being held captive.
Right. One of the greatest nights on Twitter of all time, basically. Carmelo Anthony going on his tour just to shop around and ultimately re-signing with the Knicks. And
the Lakers putting Stay D12 on a billboard. Do you remember that?
That wasn't thirsty at all. But like that is the challenge, right? Like that is gone now. That entire thing is gone. Now players and teams are just like, hey, yo, so you wanna
you up?
I probably
the text message,
like you up, yeah.
These conversations are happening in like January rather than June.
Yeah. No, but like it's funny how informal it is now, right? It's basically just, AD walking around and shoot around to someone and someone coming down like, yo, want to come talk? Okay. Like then he walks out like 180 million. It's just, that is the way things are done now, and it's not really all that interesting for fans, which I think the NBA greatly enjoyed that fans were a part of that, like that in whole experience. Remember when they had these major free agency shows and they leaned into it? Like, they still have those shows, but those shows are like water now compared to 10 years ago, because what is the conversation? Oh, who has their MLE left?
It was so Grant and I have done a block of Bleacher Report's free agency so the past 2 or 3 years, definitely the last 2, and it was in the summer of 2024. The KCP contract news hits like right away, and so we were talking, oh, this is going to be, it's about to get nuts, and that ended up being the biggest move we talked about like all night. And Adam Silver had mentioned that basically, this isn't verbatim, but I think he had said that that's not really, they're not focused on transactions in the offseason. And I think that is one, in a necessary / enviable thing to say when games are happening, but you are a league that has allowed your league partners and just allowed the league itself to market the league itself as this product of transactions, as teams, players changing teams via trades, via free agency, and you've made that part of your DNA. I do think there's been points where, you skew too far in that direction. We want to talk about the actual game's developments on the court, but they're at this weird crossroads because as much as there's issues with any type of coverage. I'm not defending the coverage, but the NBA doesn't get to sit up there. It'd be like the NBA sitting up there and denouncing sports betting when it's no, you directly campaigned for this, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Let's bring back free agency in some capacity because this is a snooze fest. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you is what is the way that you could see it coming back? Because the only thing I've come up with, and we've yet to see it, I thought De'Aaron Fox might have been a flashpoint to where, and Trae Young still could be. He was another name I had circled, to where I thought he wouldn't be this no-brainer max guy. And if he thought he was a max guy, would he then play it out? And Trae Young still, he doesn't have an extension, but he has that player option. De'Aaron Fox already kind of just signed. So I'm wondering if it gets to, is it I don't want to say the top tier superstars, but is it the regular stars, the not, let's say, perennial All-NBA guys who decide, teams are trying to squeeze me or give me less than the max because of the way the salary cap is structured with the quote-unquote threat of the aprons. And are they the ones that go to a Jaylen Brown, for instance, had he been Supermax eligible this summer instead of a previous one and said, oh, you're not going to give me the full boat. Why would I'm not going to sign this. I'll let it ride out. I don't know if that's if I sound unconvinced, it's because I'm not. Yeah.
No, because like the teams need money to actually go out and sign guys, and that's where the issue lies. Like again, teams are loading up pretty quickly on these extensions, as I talked about before, and they're extending a lot of players, and they just don't have, the money to go out and sign a De'Aaron Fox or a Jaylen Brown, unless you're basically saying, hey, Jalen, do you want to sign for less? Which just kind of puts him back in the same situation he would technically in this, hypothetical, have been in Boston. Because the whole idea of leaving a franchise who lowballs you is to go out and get your money elsewhere. If that money isn't on the market, that is the biggest, in my eyes at least, the number one issue with a bullet. Like, who has the money? And then you have the interest level. So the Nets, for example, had oodles of cash, sure. Were they interested in going out and signing a veteran guy? No, they had no intention of that. They wanted to rebuild. They wanted to use their cap space in order to rent it out, which kudos. Like, they're not doing anything wrong. Well, you could argue the way they spent their 5 first-round draft picks is we'll circle back to that one in a couple months. But they're not going to go in and say, oh, let's accelerate the timeline after being into year 1 of the rebuild. That's just not a thing. So for them, you're looking at the mid-tier teams then. Well, the mid-tier teams are already like semi-capped out. Like, they have 2 guys on $30 million contracts. They have a couple in $15, $16 million. They can't afford to go out and sign someone to like 45, 46, 47 million. So like at the end of the day, that's the challenge. That is finding teams who are legitimately flush with cash and who are intriguing and actually trying to get better immediately.
Which the issue's kind of circular too, because the reason teams aren't going to have all this money is in a lot of cases they're signing extensions for players themselves, like a lot of the non-star guys. We've veered outside of rookie extension territory, but this is all just tied together where it feels like interest in reaching, let's call RFA the semi-open market, that feels like it's at somewhat of an all-time low. So you have these teams that are giving out extensions, which is money that's going to be on their books, and you approach it from 2 perspectives. As a player, especially if you have the clout, well, I might as well just guarantee myself money, and then I will force myself out once my trade restriction lifts, if I need to. And then as a team, it's, well, what's the point of having cap space when you have no one to spend it on? If we're going to make trades, we need matching money anyway. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't even know. Is it a stretch to call it a problem? I guess I just don't know what brings back free agency in the NBA. I don't know. We're never going to be back to the halcyon days of the DeAndre Jordan being held captive in Twitter's alive, because those type of meetings don't take place anymore. It's all the negotiations. Like, at some point, the question might be like, which NBA team is most likely to have the first Chat GPT GM that's just doing all that? Like, probably the Kings. That would be my vote. Might be the one.
God.
So it's I don't even know if I want to call it an issue. It's an issue if the reporting we still get where the Lakers have set themselves up for 2027 cap space, or the Heat have done this when Jokic and Luka could have been free agents. Luka's already not going to be a free agent. And why should we believe that Jokic is going to be a free agent at that time anyway? And that makes those reports ring hollow. And I don't know what would bring free agency back. It almost feels as if a rule would need to be implemented specifically with the design of incentivizing players to want to go into free agency.
And see, I think the only argument I could find towards someone being interested in the return of free agency are some of the players who feel a bit left out, perhaps, who know that, if I were on the open market in the old days, I would get the full non-tax MLE or something like that. Now because of the current situation that I'm in, everyone is capped out, everyone is looking at the aprons, I'm going to have to sign for like $7 million a year. Like, those are the players that are probably getting screwed a little bit, who would want to see free agency return in some capacity. But I think most guys are actually just fine with the current setup because they get paid when, frankly, they want to get paid. Like, Luka could have chosen not to sign anything. That offer was just there. I was surprised initially. I know we hadn't had any reports on it whatsoever, but I thought he had an eye on San Antonio because the Spurs could have had max cap space next year. Like, they wouldn't have had to, retain De'Aaron Fox, for example. And Fox wasn't he was on an expiring deal as is. You could have gone into that summer, and then if Luka was like, hey, Wemby, the Spurs would be like, oh, De'Aaron, it was nice you wanted to come here. Now go find a new home. Like, they could have done that, but instead, Luka was like, I want to extend. Then the Spurs went to De'Aaron Fox and was like, hey, you know what? Sure, let's extend your ass as well. That's the way it's built now, and players are getting paid, and no one is batting an eye. It's only for us who cover the league and for the fans that we lose out on an entertainment product.
And I think a lot of the guys we're about to talk about are illustrations of how much has changed. How's that for a segue to where they got noticed? A lot of these guys just might have bet on themselves previously, where they knew their teams would give them more money, or they would have trusted there will be at least one team out there that gives me an offer sheet that I can leverage. Dyson Daniels of the Atlanta Hawks. So he signs a 4-year, $100 million deal, flat $25 million per year, average of, and I think it's important to talk about these things now in percentages of the cap because the dollar figures are so high. It's an average of 14% of the salary cap. It has no options.
Steal. Freaking steal.
Okay. I disagree.
Why?
I want to make it clear. I don't think it's a bad deal.
It's 15% of the cap next year, sir, for one of the best defenders in the league. How dare you?
Okay. Well, and if you ask the GM survey, one of the most versatile defenders in the league, which I would probably disagree with there. I think is someone who does what he does on defense. Like, where you're looking at someone who can blow up like an entire guy's night.
Right.
Dyson Daniels is spectacular. He's had one, and I know you could say this is an issue of role. He didn't have the opportunity or the usage in New Orleans. We're talking about one season's worth of evidence, and you've now decided that this is someone who is a 15% of the salary cap guy. I guess I don't have an issue. I don't think he's overpaid. I just don't. This feels about right for someone who still has a very limited track record for based off what he did last year. And there's still there's a pretty big question mark in his game on offense when it comes to, do you trust that he's going to hit floaters enough, or will he ever develop any kind of a consistent perimeter game?
I hear that. I totally do. And look, if this had been like 20% of the cap, I would have sat there and gone, that's a tough sell because, again, you can't play or pay one-way players in this league. I just don't think he's a one-way player. I thought we saw enough last year to at least see that, there is something in his tank that is significantly more than what we saw with the Pelicans. Like, if he had just made like a marginal improvement from year 2 to year 3, I too would have been skeptical, very skeptical. But the leap that he took, I think, from the playmaking also, just the fact that he was able to pace and space himself offensively, I just think this is a tremendous deal, and it's so tradable too at the same time. Like, even if last season is going to prove to be a slight outlier, and he's going, like, his real value, and I'm putting this in quotation marks, is like a little less of last year's production, yeah, you're going to take one of the league's peskiest and best on-ball defenders at 15% of the cap. By the way, that percentage declines as the contract ages. I think it ends up at, I don't want to lie to you, so let me just look it up, 13% of the cap in 2030. I mean, good Lord. That's fine.
I think it's fine, but you're telling me it's a steal. And
Yeah, I think it's a steal.
I don't think
You
you've
could
said
argue
anything
that-
I guess where I struggle is to call it a steal after he's had the one standout season. And you can say, again, he didn't have that opportunity in New Orleans, but I think it's the Hawks played it smartly by not going as far. Like everyone thought, not everyone, a lot of people thought he was going to get the Jalen Suggs deal, 5 for $150, and I thought that was just far too rich. And I think this one should end up being perfectly fine. But how often have we who is the archetype of player that you're comfortable paying 15% of the salary cap to if on offense if they're a borderline liability at the foul line or they're not able to shoot any type of threes, and it's tough to understand what their offensive value is in the context of certain lineups. Again, I like Dyson Daniels. You used the word pest is pesky, great way to describe him on the defensive end. But it's also not, if he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, it's not going to be because he's been the anchor of basically an entire system. Like, it's because people are going to appreciate the one-on-one stuff that he's able to do and the plays that he's able to blow up, which, again, all have a ton of value. I just struggle to see the pathway to this becoming a steal in the sense of we look back and it's, Dyson Daniels is like a fringe all-star, or he is an all-star.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't think that contract necessarily warrants that mindset of like an all-star or fringe all-star, because again, like if we're talking about 15% of the cap and it goes down to 13% of the cap, we should eyeball that as someone who's like what, the 5th starter, like somewhere like on the pecking order.
I guess our only disconnect is you think it's a heist or whatever the word is you're using. I think it's fair.
Right, and that's because I think we could argue offensively he's probably always going to be like a 5th option. I think that's perfectly fair. Then you add in the defense, you add in the rebounding, you add in the improved playmaking that we haven't seen this year so far, by the way, but it's early, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's when I think, it's reasonable to say, okay, in terms of like overall importance, he's not the 5th guy in a starting lineup. He's probably currently the 3rd best player on the team. Is that reasonable?
Trey, Jalen Johnson. You would have to like Reese Shea or Okongwu or
I have
Kristaps over him. Yeah, that's probably fair to
I would
say.
have Porzingis over him if I knew the health was sustainable, and it's just not. So right now, I feel pretty comfortable, putting Dyson Daniels in as like the 3rd best player on the team, and that's why I think it's a heist, because usually guys of that ilk, in that type of ranking, gets around 20% of the cap, if not 22, 23% of the cap.
That's fair. I guess I'm more so of as a team, I probably wanted another year where it just feels it almost feels like we're dealing with a 1-year sample size with which he's getting paid off.
Oh, I get it. I think, your skepticism, I accept your skepticism. I do. I disagree with it because I think, we saw so much of him last year to the point where the sample size for, the 2 years before that became sort of irrelevant. But I do get what you're saying. If we'd seen this for 2 years, then you'd feel more comfortable just handing him that deal. And I can certainly get behind that way of thinking.
Our next guy up is Christian Braun. This one came in at the buzzer. 5 years, $125 million, average of about 13.6% of the cap. No options on it as well. How'd you feel about this one?
Well, it's basically the same, roughly the same deal, right? All things considered. I like it. I don't have any issues with it. I mean, again, he's a 4th guy on that team offensively. Defensively, he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I also think he has moments where he could be better. Like, I don't think he's quite a finished product. Offensively is where he shines. I loved how his shot selection last year just became one of the better in the league. He wasn't just gunning. He was reading the floor, seeing what can I get in this particular instance. And what did he end up shooting? Was it 57% from the field or something ridiculous like that? He was up there.
Yeah, and he shot a better 2-point percentage last year with Nikola Jovic off the floor. I think he was in the 60s either way, or whatever it was.
Right.
But the growth he showed in transition as a cutter, even if he was just going to get into the paint with the ball in general, I think the big question for him is it's shooting. I hate to boil it down to this, but can the 3-point volume and efficiency tick up here? And defensively too, Dyson Daniels has this one dominant thing to where like the on ball, if you were to list the best on ball defenders in the NBA, he would be on your short list.
Yes.
And Christian Braun that's not his game, but then it's also he can get in trouble sometimes when it comes to screen navigation. There are certain matchups to where it felt like he definitely holds up better a lot against a lot of these, I guess, star types on the perimeter than KCP would have as he was aging, but you still have questions about, well, what is the actual, I don't want to use the word position, but the positional spectrum that he can guard. This feels, this is an interesting question, so you're probably higher on the Dyson Daniels extension from a team perspective than this one, right? I like this one better than the Dyson Daniels extension.
I think it's a wash for me because the thing, I think we tend largely to ignore the need for offensive production around Jokic, right? It seems like so many people are just like, well, Jokic is going to Jokic. And to some extent, that's true. But his passing skills, his passing instinct, his court vision, that needs to be bridged with high competence offensive players. Christian Braun is that. Yeah, and I even agree with you on the spacing thing because he took less than 3 threes per game last year, and he didn't get much to the foul line either. So, like, something there has to grow. Like, there's whether it's an upped 3-point volume or it's him just becoming, like a free-throw merchant. I honestly, I don't care. One of those things has to happen. But he just flew in with this high understanding of offensive execution. I think you need that next to Jokic. I just do. So I'm not low on this deal whatsoever. I loved it. I think him and Dyson Daniels, very comparable. Like, the reason I say with Dyson it's a steal is because of, like, the projections moving forward. I think Christian is a little bit more reaching his ceiling close.
He's older, too. That's a good point.
Exactly. Right. But I like what he gave the Nuggets last year in terms of offensive production and the way he went about it. Very, very high on Christian Braun. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him, so I don't hate this whatsoever.
What's interesting, not to bring it back to Dyson Daniels, but I would almost feel better about him if he was tasked with doing more on the ball offensively, and you had to not build your entire offense around him, but you tailored the shooting around him more specifically. But the idea of him playing alongside someone who's ball dominant or two people who are more ball dominant than him, I don't feel comfortable with. And then Christian Braun is just, you absolutely feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. It's funny, right? Usually when we say plug and play guys, we tend to look at great shooters, which you can't say Braun is yet somehow he fits that description.
Next up, I found this deal fascinating. I'm curious your thoughts on it. Jabari Smith Jr., as my dogs go off in the background, they're not happy about it either. 5 years, $122 million. The salary declines from year 1 to year 2. It then rises in years 3, 4, and 5. Averages out to about 13.3% of the salary cap, and it includes no options.
I did not like it at the time. I'm still skeptical of what his ceiling is. I understand why the Rockets did it in terms of like the cap percentage, because they're banking on him becoming, that fit next to Alperen Sengun. They want someone who can be a floor spacer. They want someone who can go off the dribble occasionally. He's doing it fairly. He's not someone who will consistently break you down. And at the same time, you also need someone who isn't going to necessarily be overwhelming in terms of like shot volume. So like, I understand part of the appeal. To me, Tari Eason is flat out better. He did not get an accept. Yeah, I know, that's fair. You can do that. You can give me all the weird looks you want. That's fine. Jabari has been pegged as like shooter, right? Natural shooter. Then how come he don't shoot well, Dan?
What do you mean, how come he don't shoot well?
Well, I mean,
what are you looking for him to shoot 40% on 8 attempts per game?
I'm looking at look, his career percentage is 34. I'm at least looking at a slightly above league average if we're going to like label him a good shooter. Like, he hasn't done that yet. And, like, I'm not saying he won't get there. The free throw percentage since year one has been encouraging. Like, I love the shot mechanics, but the ball is just not going in to an extent that I've expected. And that was through 3 years. Like, again, people think I'm very low on him, and it's fair if that is, like, you know, the vibe you're getting from me. I'm not low on him, but I just think we have crowned him a little too early in this whole process. And now he's also been paid to a point where I'm like, are we really there? Like, are we really at that point? I thought it was expensive for a guy like him because I don't have a good read on him, despite the fact that he's 3 years into the league.
I do think part of the reason that a lot of people wouldn't have a good read on him is because of how the Rockets were structured to where he's starting games at the 3 now.
Yeah,
and I look at it as, he can thrive defensively while playing alongside 2 other bigs. And I think what I agree with you is what he is going to shoot from distance is not stand out for someone who's considered a wing, but as someone who's kind of a combo big masquerading as a wing to be able to stretch the floor. I also wonder what he would look like on a team that's better designed to get him the ball for higher quality shots. He's not going to have the lowest shot quality on the Rockets by any stretch. And look, there are still some issues. I want to see, can there be more of just the catch and drive game from him? Yeah. Is the handle good enough for him to do that? Does Houston have a good enough spacing for him to do that? But I think the defensive malleability, the fact that he has shown he's certain to me, I trust him reliably spacing the floor more than I do Tari Eason. And I'm not just saying that as watching fair. Tari Eason this year. I think this number is fair, and I could honestly I love Christian Braun, but of the 3 players we've talked about, I might be most fascinated or think that he has the highest ceiling of all 3 of them just because of what you can't. Dyson Daniels and Christian Braun are never going to be able to wear as many hats defensively as Jabari Smith Jr. And that's not because I'm not saying they won't try to. He's this big who can also do a lot of wing stuff on the defensive end. And that, to me, when he's also mostly plug and play, I would argue on offense, I find that tantalizing. And I think there might be more on offense. I don't want to see him doing a lot of the stuff he did earlier in his career before Ime Udoka got there. And even now, he can fall in love with some of those looks that no one wants to see, at least not on this version of the Rockets. I think this deal has the potential to look so team friendly, especially when we get to the back end of it. But I think your skepticism, especially when it's rooted in his spot on the Rockets and the team they seem to be building there, I don't think that's unfair.
Like, I hope that you're right about that because if it turns out to be a team-friendly contract, that means he's found a more permanent place in this league where his production has, leveled up, or to a point where we're seeing that he is a more integral part of the team. And I think that is a very, very fair conclusion in terms of, like, well, what do you expect? Like, these Rockets over the first 3 years of his career, they have been kind of all over the place. Like, what is he being asked to do? Like, I agree with you defensively. I think he's underrated. I think that's something that we don't get to talk enough about because he came into the league as, this. I think Lauri Markkanen was one of the guys he was being compared to. And, that's the worst thing about comparisons is you kind of get locked into this mindset that, he's like player A. Which, no, he's not. Like, yeah, he's a 6'11" guy who shoots threes. That's roughly where the comparisons end. To me, I just don't know if he has the touch that we all kind of look at him as having. Like, the in-between game is not something I love. The 2-point conversion rate, sometimes I'm just looking at not just the stats, but, like, watching him play. I'm just like, you could make these shots at a higher regularity, and, like, I can accept that he's having a year where he's just, like, awful because everyone has a down year here and there, but it's just been 3 years of, like, middling efficiency. I need to see something in terms of, especially in the efficiency department, where I'm like, oh, this is his role, this is where he offers something. But I do agree with you in terms of the defensive upside being like a wing big, which I think is the best way to categorize him. There's upside. Yeah.
The rim stuff it's how to, the finishing sure is an issue, but it's even just how do we get him to the basket more? And without on this current version of the Rockets, it's not going to be as a screener and roller, which is maybe not something that he might have bailed out and done prefer to operate from the middle of the floor anyway. It's a lot of this hinges, which is a weird thing to say. on his driving game or ability to kind of eat up
Right.
the space that he's going to have on either on kickouts or maybe like maybe he won't even have a ton of open space because I think that in a lot of these Rockets lineups, you can say what you want about the percentages. He's going to be viewed as one of the more dangerous shooters on the floor.
And by the way, like when I said the Tari Eason stuff, I want to be fair. One of the reasons that I have Jabari rated below, it's also part of the mentality. I think, he's going to be extremely team friendly in the sense of like how he's wired personality wise. Like he has willingly relinquished opportunities for the sake of others. Like he, by all accounts, is a fantastic teammate in that regard. I need that dude to be more hungry. Like I can't even count the amount of times when he's had an open three, or not open, but like where he could have been allowed to shoot that. Like where, you catch my drift, like just fucking take it. And the same thing goes with drives. The same thing goes when you have a driving lane. Like he just turns down so many opportunities. And I think he's sort of a victim of his own like unselfish mindset. I think he's the type of guy who always looks for like the best shot imaginable, and he'll turn down the good ones in the process. So there's definitely a part of me that also thinks that if he gets that sorted out and he just starts taking the good shots instead of like the best shots, that he'll be just fine.
Next up, we have Nikola Jovic of the Miami Heat. He received 4 years, $62.4 million. The salary declines from year 1 to year 2, and then it rises in years 3 and 4. It averages about 8.8% of the cap, smallest number we've seen so far. No options. Mort, how did you feel about this one?
No, I loved it. I mean, I was a little bit surprised that he signed it. I don't know what the the thinking process was there, whether he was like, we don't know what the future holds. Let's just lock it in. Perhaps there was something of that going on, because we've seen these improvements from him, over the course of 3 seasons. I think the 3-point shot is something that got better last year. I know people will say, well, his efficiency went down, but like the volume went up. I thought he took them with more purpose, generally speaking. The size you can't teach, like 6'10" wing who can do stuff with the ball, who can actually make passes. Defensively, still got some things to iron out. I think the discipline level is probably not where it needs to be. But like, how young is this kid? Like 22? Like, yeah, like just to your point about Jabari Smith, we can apply that to Jovic too. He's so freaking young. Like, there's time to iron out some of the kinks. So it's a great deal. Great freaking deal.
I thought this was one that made sense for both sides because Jovic has been intermittently available when you look at how many of the games that he's played throughout his career. The upside bet on the Heat for a price range that's just so ridiculously low, though, it's the idea of being able to put a floor spacing big man, because we're still waiting to see. Bam and Khalil Ware are both, I guess, for their positions, it's okay, they can space the floor, but a lot of what they're doing, it feels like more concept than like practical. Right. And Nikola Jovic is an actual floor spacer, but the thing that I think intrigues me the most about him is when this dude gets going downhill, the reads he can make as a scorer, he's got some like nice shoulder stuff in him. As a passer, we've seen him make excellent plays for the Heat, and now the Heat overall are playing faster, which I think fits what he can do when he has a live dribble or he's just hot footing it towards the basket. He can create chaos as a playmaker as well. I know a ton of smart people who just disagree. I don't love the idea of, I don't view him as someone that you could put on the elbows, on the block, anywhere, and set up the offense or run it from there. Maybe he can catch it, shoot over someone, sure. I don't know that he's a little bit more physical than he gets credit for, but I don't know if he's built for that. You mentioned the defensive concern, so that would be maybe a reason to be skeptical of this deal, is how do you view someone who is a pure 4? Almost it feels like we talk a lot about those guys, but what he can do defensively, even if he is a pure 4, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of like dynamism to the way that he plays on that end of the floor.
I agree.
Next up, we have AJ Green, not a traditional rookie extension, but 4 years, $45 million, average of 6.3% of the cap, no options. What are your spicy AJ Green takes?
Well, how can we hate on a guy who is one of the best shooters in the league getting that deal? That's a good bit of business from the Bucks, who, for the first time, I feel like in a long time, had the organization's best interests at heart instead of always focusing on just the need of one guy. No, that like how can you hate that? It's 6% of the cap. It's peanuts in today's game. How can you have a problem with it?
I think, and the fact that he can do other things offensively other than just sling it, and even just he's one of those guys where he will compete harder on defense than he gets a lot of credit for. I think what intrigues me most about him is because of everything I just said. Is there just a chance that he's the third best player on the Bucks by the end of this season? Perhaps that says more about the Bucks, but you have Giannis, you have Miles Turner. Who are you? I'm not even talking third option guy, and that's not really AJ Green's game anyway.
Right.
But just the third most valuable player on the Bucks. Is it guaranteed to be Bobby Portis or Ryan Rollins? At this rate, it might just be Cole Anthony.
You can't rule it out. It's certainly not Kyle Kuzma. So that's the one thing we can say with certainty. Look, there are a couple people you can throw into that conversation, and it's so early. How many games are we looking at with Milwaukee so far?
The Bucks have played 3. Yeah,
three?
2.
3 games?
I've seen 2. There have been 3. Yeah, okay.
I think they played 3. They're 2-1. But he's in that conversation, and if he sticks in that, if he becomes like one of the mainstay guys in the rotation who's just consistently efficient, effective, and one of their better floor spacers, you can certainly make that argument, which is ridiculous for 6% of the cap, by the way.
Yeah, to have a guy who should be in an NBA rotation at 6% of the set and play real minutes, not 12, 13, but could play 20-plus minutes. I think this ends up aging quite well.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a bigger name. You might have heard of him. Paolo Banchero of the Orlando Magic. He signed a 5-year max, which is projected to be worth $240.7 million. However, it can go up to $288.8 million more if he makes All-NBA or wins MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. This averages out over the life of it. I'm not doing the 30%. This is just the fun max. Would be about 20.8% of the cap over the life of this deal. And of note, he got a player option in that final season.
Mm-hmm. It's Paolo. He's fantastic. I still have some overarching issues or questions, not issues, questions about how you build around his archetype of player. That said, if there's a guy who can sort of find his way, I think it's him. I think occasionally he can get stuck a little bit in that whole, the Zion Williamson, and I put this in quotation mark, Josh Giddey mechanism, where it's guys who need the ball in their hands, who aren't necessarily great off-ball shooters themselves. So, when they don't have the ball in their hands, how much do they really bend defenses? But Paolo is different because he's so big, he's so physical, he's so strong that when he makes an off-ball cut towards the basket, yeah, you know what? You're going to feel him, and it's going to draw in the defense. Defenses are keenly aware of where he is. So even if he's not a natural three-point shooter, it's not going to be that big of an issue as it is with Zion or again, Josh Giddey doesn't deserve to mention with those two guys, but I bring him up because it's the same archetype, the same weaknesses you're looking ahead or looking at. So yeah, the contract is fine. I would hope that for the Magic's sake that he doesn't make All NBA.
They had no choice but to. This is the deal you had to offer him because they gave Franz Wagner the same special minus he doesn't have the player option. And I still think Paolo Banchero is going to end up being the more valuable, better guy long term. There's a lot. I think what also helps him is he's just better defensively than he receives credit for. I think it's easy to get lost in the Jalen Suggs of it all and the larger picture of the Orlando Magic.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But you're right about the off-ball stuff. And look, the 3-point percentage is going to be a concern, especially now, if it's not going to tick up from where it is. But the fact that conceptually he can do all these things, where he can do some of the wing stuff off the ball, where you're talking about cutting, but he can also be, if you wanted to, Paolo can interact with your other two best players as the screener in Franz Wagner or Desmond Bane. So that gives him a level of versatility. And I also think, I know some people look and say, well, they're not the most efficient postseason appearances, and they're certainly not the most lengthy ones, but his ability to kind of either turn the dials up or still be a better version of himself or a slightly more supercharged version of himself when you get to the postseason, that really had to work in his favor as well, even though, again, you're not dealing with that huge sample size there. We move on to Chet Holmgren, back-to-back maxes. Chet Holmgren got 5 years, $240.7 million. No All-NBA escalator language, though. It averages about 20.8% of the cap. Again, he did not receive a player option. What did you make of this one, Mort?
I thought right on the top of it, I was a little worried, but that's also because of like the injury pattern and whatnot. Like the quality of who he is as a basketball player was never, in question. This talent was never in question. The fit was never in question. The defensive upside was never in question. So yeah, obviously he was going to get this. To me, it was always a question of, like, Thunder, are you ready to invest this much in a guy who's played, before the 3 games he's played this year, 114 games in the regular season over the course of his career? They apparently said, look, screw that. We are completely fine with this because it's an upside play. We want to make sure that our relationship with him is great and that it doesn't tick into summer. Like, he's unquestionably going to receive an offer sheet, like, to bring it back to restricted free agency if he does hit the market. So, like, why bother? And I get all those things. So, like, this is fine.
I thought it was actually a really good, like, super team friendly deal on OKC's part, because not having the escalator language in there is, Chet Holmgren is someone you could envision just probably not winning Defensive Player of the Year because Wemby exists, but he is good enough to make an All-NBA team this year. Especially he's doing the thing again where he kind of shows you that, he might have learned some more counters on the offensive end. I also think not getting a player option, just low-key huge when we don't know how long the core is going to be together. Stuff changes in the NBA faster than anyone ever anticipates now. But if he has a player option, you're dealing with, what if he's Supermax eligible at that point? Like, you're dealing with paying him a lot more money a lot sooner. And so I thought, I think some people wanted there to be more injury protections in there, but you kind of hit on this, and your answer is, no, this is someone who, if he would have hit the open market, there would have been teams, if they didn't have cap space, they would have figured it out just to put an offer sheet in front of them.
And that's also why I eventually moved on from my, oh God, that was a lot of money stance to just, all right, you know what? Someone out there would have given that to him without the injury language. So there's just no point in debating this.
There's probably no point in debating this one much either. Jalen Williams, triple maxes in a row. That's not going to happen again throughout this process, I can tell you that much. So he gets the 5-year, $240.7 million special, escalator language, which, again, OKC in a nice bit of negotiating, he only gets the 30% if he makes first team All-NBA. It's 27% of the cap if he makes second team and 26% if he makes third team. Averages, again, 20.8% of the cap if it doesn't go up. He did not get, I think I have it noted in here, that's a typo on screen. He did not get a player option. So where Paolo gets a player option and Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams do not, I know that Shea is technically more important to that team, but we're talking about stars. They're all on the same scale as stars. You could rank them however you want long term. OKC getting both of these guys to sign deals that don't include a player option is kind of insane. And I'm even marveling at, first of all, I stand by this. Jalen Williams shouldn't need the escalator language. He already made an All-NBA team. He should have just been eligible for 30% of the max. But from the Thunder's perspective, this was a really good negotiation by them in a position to where I don't think they necessarily had the leverage to negotiate. If J-Dub came in and said, I want 5 years, player option, 30% max if I make All-NBA third team, you really think the Thunder were going to say, no, we'll let it ride? Absolutely not.
No, this is a great deal. They're probably going to end up paying him 26 or 27%, I would imagine.
Will he played enough games, I think, is the question we're going to have to ask ourselves at this point.
That is, but even if he did, that's a tough crowd. First team All-NBA, that's a tough crowd to break. Like, one of your teammates is already basically shoehorned into that.
Oh, no, I just meant you said All-NBA in general, which I would agree with you. I'd have him penciled in there, but now we're with the wrist stuff. It's, is he going to play?
I hear you. I get it. Like, he hasn't played this year. Like, when is he expected back?
It's the Thunder, so we don't actually know.
We know.
We'll know about the same time we know when the Knicks tell us that Mitchell Robinson is going to play.
That is fair. That is fair. Yeah.
So next up on this, that was an easy one. The Thunder ones are always easy. Shaedon Sharpe, more. This one, I think it might be my favorite one to talk about because it's just so fascinating. 4 years, $90 million, averages 12.6% of the salary cap, no options. I'm actually, honestly, I was a little bit surprised that he signed an extension in general. So I'm very curious to see how you felt about this one.
So I wrote about this over at Forbes before he signed, like when it was reported that he wanted 4 years, 100, and I made the argument, sign. Like don't let this go into a situation. And like I was telling the Portland Trailblazers, just sign it. Just that's fine. That's not a problem. And then they actually got him for $10 million less. Here's the thing: you can squeeze guys to a point where it hurts the relationship. And I don't think that is worth it for the Blazers to squeeze Shaedon Sharpe, because I think his talent and his potential is just too intriguing to a point where that should be a factor. I understand he's not a great shooter. I understand that defensively he's still got much to learn. I understand that there are still pretty big question marks overall, just in terms of what type of player is he really? Mm-hmm. I get all that. The guy has been productive since he came into the league at age 19. He's 22 years old. Like, we know that he can get to the rim. We know that he's highly athletic. We know that even though the conversion rate isn't great, he can take and make threes. Like, the efficiency, it should come, because I don't know where you stand on this. I have probably looked at 500 shots from this guy from every angle. I'm not seeing what should be fundamentally wrong in his shot mechanics. Like, are you at that point where you think that this is just a matter of confidence, rhythm? Because so far I have no great explanation for why he isn't a better three-point shooter. So I've just decided to assume it's going to come in time.
I've operated under the same assumption, but there are probably some fair red flags to where he's been, he had 1 year of standout foul line efficiency. Right. And so there's that noise that needs to be caked in there. You mentioned the defense already. I don't know what to make of him as a passer. Like, he'll sometimes have these assist numbers, but like the turnovers with him, including this season, they've been up there. But I'm with you. I want to ask you this question. Why does it feel like more people are just so much more prepared to bet on Shaedon Sharpe than they are Jalen Green, though?
Oh, that's a good question. That's actually a really good question. I think it's because Jalen has a different reputation in terms of being like a chucker of some sort. There's a negative connotation there. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just trying to find a reasonable explanation. Where Sharpe, I think, is seen as someone who integrates himself a little bit more to the team. Whether that's right or wrong is actually an interesting discussion, though. But I think that is where it leads. That there is an idea that Jalen, is gunning for a certain stat line, so to speak, where Sharpe is more, no, I'll find my own way within the flow of the offense.
I would probably agree with you there. And what's interesting, though, is just they have kind of some of the same red flags, even when you're looking at it to where it's, all right, you kind of wish the 3-point percentage, especially if they're taking a lot of catch and shoots, would just be higher. I think last year, Sharpe, he was under 32% again on catch and shoots. And so I thought he would have bet on himself if 4-year 90 was the offer. But now when you think about, what just happened with even Jonathan Kuminga and Cam Thomas and Quentin Grimes, I think a lot of people would say at least they prefer Shaedon Sharpe to two of those players. You're kind of wondering, is this a pure two that hasn't shown that he can score efficiently, defend consistently?
Right.
What would the market be for him? So getting this money from, I look at it and I guess I'm trying to view it as, who is this the bigger concession for? It's the bigger risk for the Blazers, because Sharpe he locked down his money, and if he doesn't pan out, the Blazers saddle all of that risk. And if he does pan out, okay, he'll be underpaid, but it's still a crap ton of money in the aggregate. I'm just curious, if we fast forward a year, 2 years, who we think wound up making the bigger concession, to where it's, Portland should have waited and squeezed him more, or just waited and tried to move him, or did Sharpe, is this the year where it all comes together for him? I don't know if it's all going to come together for him defensively, quite frankly. He certainly has the tools. Right. But if it all comes together for him offensively, that's probably a player that people are willing to pay quite a bit of money for.
It's interesting as well, because there's a point that Brian Toporek, our mutual friend, has made routinely over the past 4 years, I want to say, 3 or 4 years. And it's basically the amount of raw dollars. Like, players, as we know, are human beings. They look at things differently. Some players might be inclined to just look at $90 million and realize, hey, that's $90 million to play basketball. Like, sure, let's go nuts. Let's just sign this, and then whether it's we're going to get criticized for taking too little or betting on ourselves later, this is $90 million that we have in the hand right now that we can accept. So I think, we can sit here and talk about concessions. We can sit here and talk about, should a player have done A, B, and C to get more? I think we need to include the human factor that some people might. I'm not saying Shaedon Sharpe is necessarily wired that way, but I'm just going to use him as an example. Some players might just look at a figure and go, well, when I woke up this morning, I didn't have $90 million. Now I do. Thank you very much.
Well, you could also wake up, and we talked about this at the top of the podcast, survey what the RFA landscape has been of late, and think Jonathan Kuminga has been X through the first 4 years of his career. This is where it all ended up. Why? Right. What does he need to do to be noticeably different when he gets to the semi-open market next year? We could talk about what he could do, but there's no guarantee you're going to do it, especially, there's just uncertainty on the offensive end still in Portland when you look at the hierarchy of how things are happening there.
You're absolutely right. We'll see. I think this was a decent contract overall for both sides. Shaedon, I guess if we are to look at it through the prism of, concession, I think he's probably the one who's going to end up having given up the most.
Yeah.
But it feels like a deal that's just decent all around. Like, I just don't have an issue with it from either side. It might be one of the most mutually beneficial contracts at this point.
That's a good point. And I think the other thing, though, that is if you're basing it purely off what Shaedon Sharpe has done so far, it's probably not the best deal for the Blazers, right? Like, I know he's been able to score, but it hasn't been with standout. If I were to tell you this is just Shaedon Sharpe, he's not going to evolve at all.
Right.
It's not anywhere near the worst deal in the league. I'm not trying to say that, but it's, the Blazers probably gave him more than they had to then.
Yeah, that I would agree with.
We have another Blazer coming up, Toumani Camara. That became the Toumani Camara trade. What was supposed to be the DeAndre Ayton trade became the Toumani Camara trade. 4 years, $81 million, less than the max he could have gotten, actually. Average of 11.3% of the cap and no options. How you feeling about the Toumani Camara?
I'm not going to answer that question. That's all yours. That is your segment.
I can't believe he didn't get the max, quite frankly. This is someone who has improved as a driver and a three-point shooter on a team that has one of the worst spacing environments since he's arrived. I know he's not shooting the ball well this year so far. We're only 3 games in, though. But I also think if you're having a conversation, Mort, and I'm asking you to rank the most versatile defenders in the NBA, he's somewhere on that short list. I don't know where exactly, but you're going to mention Bam. You're probably going to mention Jaren Jackson Jr., Evan Mobley, OG Anunoby, Toumani Camara, those, he's coming up in versatility. I'm not saying he's dominant or going to win Defensive Player of the Year.
No, I get you.
This is an all-defense team guy. This is someone who will be, and if he is able to reliably hit the 3-ball, even just that, he's shown other hints, but if he's just able to do that, he is one of the most valuable non-stars in the NBA, and what would the max have been, 490, whatever it would, I thought it was going to take that. I guess the concession the Blazers are making, we don't have to pay you. You had that non-guaranteed year left. They could have just guaranteed him, and he would have been on the books for packing peanuts. But I thought he was going to get the full 4-year boat. I was wrong, clearly.
Well, I mean, they just don't value him to the same way that you do, and they're obviously wrong. You think this is a steal? I think this is going to age. I know he's older. This will take him through his age 29 season. Unless you're thinking, and based off everything you've said on this podcast about where these salaries rank in a team conceptual pecking order, you're not going to feel this way. Unless you think that he needs to show some off-the-dribble juice on the offensive end or just better passing chops or running pick and rolls on every other possession. I don't know why you would have a problem with this. This is the one where it feels, to me, I
I would listen to it. I don't think I could ever understand any criticism of it.
Well, see, there's an assumption there from some people that because he's so old, there's not any more juice left. But that is, I think, a faulty premise because, yeah, there's probably not that big, huge leap, from being a role player or, non-star, as you would call it, to a star. That's not to say he's not going to get better. He's 25. If anything, we can argue that he is going to, refine his game within the NBA context. He is going to be paid throughout some of the, prime years that he's going into because that contract's going to trigger next year when he's 26. 26 through 29, was that like through the age 29 season?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're paying him in the smack dab middle of his prime, roughly $20 million a year, an average, which is going to be, I don't want to say peanuts, but it's going to be closer to the non-tax MLE when his contract is like up. When he clearly is worth more than, he's not a non-tax MLE guy. He's worth more than that. So yeah, obviously this is a major get. And it just speaks again to the fact that some players will always be greatly underappreciated around the league. He is one of them.
I'm trying to visualize what it would take this season for me to be concerned about this deal. I think even if he shoots the ball poorly, I probably still don't feel bad about it. I'm not going to feel as good about it, of course. But if he's going to continue to miss every shot on drives like he is right now, where he's not going to shoot amazing from three, I probably won't think it's like one of the best contracts.
Right.
Right. I get it. He defends 5 positions, basically. That's okay with me.
I mean, 3 games. Let's chill. He'll be fine.
That's 3 whole games, Mort.
3 whole games. I know.
Next up, we have Keegan Murray, who got this extension after he suffered his left thumb injury, right, Mort? He had already suffered it. 5 years.
That I don't remember, honestly.
Okay. I thought the news came after, but maybe I'm wrong. 5 years, $140 million, average of 15.2% of the cap, no options. He will be entering his age 30 season by the time this contract is done, though, Mort. What did you think about a little bit of Kings business here?
Well, so Brian Saporik, again, our mutual friend, and we actually...
Could you stop assigning friendom?
No, I won't.
Okay,
I won't.
fine.
No, that is...
Don't speak on my behalf about scum like that.
Well, he and I, we covered this when it happened, and we had this, it turns out we had the same reaction when we saw the number. Like 5 years, 140, and we're like, damn, that's a lot of money.
Tax.
And then, right? And it's just, immediately we're like, oh, wait, hang on, that's actually fine? Because at the end of the day, the cap percentage is not that significant. Presumably, eventually, the DeMar DeRozan project in Sacramento is going to end. Presumably, eventually, he's going to have a role there where they actually prioritize him, because why wouldn't they? Like, yeah, they have not necessarily been that great at giving him the ball and giving him the necessary freedom in Sacramento since he arrived. But we're not going to sit here and say that he's not good, that he can't produce offensively. He turned into their best defender last year. His rebounding metrics since he came into the league have also greatly improved.
Low man stuff he does too.
Yes. There are some concerns. There was this idea when he came into the league that he was going to be like, what was it? Was it like a Carmelo Anthony level scorer? Some people kind of pegged him as like, oh, he's got that frame. Whereas Carmelo could get to the free throw line 8 or 9 times per game, Murray does it like one. He shoots like 1 free throw per game. So that's like a major issue in terms of like him becoming that 24, 25 point scorer. So you're going to need to rely a lot on the perimeter shot. Is that a shot that he will be able to convert consistently at a high rate? He did it in his rookie season, and then after that, it's been pretty pedestrian. So, like, I'm not going to sit here and say there aren't issues or aren't major question marks, but given what he was paid, I just don't have that much of an issue with it overall. Like, players are still going to have to respect the three. He's become a good defender. He's active on the glass. Like, worst comes to shove, He's a fourth option on an NBA team, a decent to good defender who can actually participate on the glass and play two positions. Yeah, I'm giving 15% of the cap to that.
And I think a just as interesting way to frame it is he will be, as of right now, this number will actually probably tumble because there are still guys that will sign deals. This is listed as the 77th highest paid salary when the extension kicks in. That's fine for what Keegan Murray is right now. And I'd probably echo all of your concerns. I think maybe if they had more consistent, their offensive hierarchy has changed every single season that he's been there. And I'm just curious if he was in a more stable situation or if Sacramento had been more stable. But he's going to need to hit the threes at the higher clip. But you can feel good about the investment overall, to your point, because of all the things he's doing defensively. That he wasn't billed as this defensively. And frankly, if he's on another team, no, you don't want Keegan Murray as your Steph Curry guy, as an example. But the fact that he even had to do that and just wasn't absolutely awful, and then the fact of what he's actually become when you look at the things he does in the front court, I'm not. If you don't think it's a steal, I'm not saying I think it's a steal. We need to see what he is on offense. I just don't know. Do you think Sacramento's the place, as currently constructed, or even like similarly constructed, that would be built to even plumb what he could do on offense, or do you look at it as more as, well, even what they're asking him to do, he's kind of underachieved a little bit?
A little column A, a little column B, right? I do think some of it is on him. I do think a lot of it is also on the Kings. It's always so difficult to say, oh, this is where it went wrong, and this is exclusively it. It's layered, I think.
No, boil it down to one thing. Go.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. It's a really good question. I want to find out.
Are you ready to talk about some guys that did not get extensions?
Yes, because we're an hour in, so obviously.
Jaden Ivey did not get an extension. Or excuse me, I'm sorry, Peyton Watson.
I was about to say, Jaden Ivey turning into 6'10", he should have gotten an extension.
Peyton Watson, I didn't expect him to get an extension.
No.
His value is so tough to peg, but I do think there might be a team that would give him, if he's the player he is right now, which is incredibly flawed, but so damn tantalizing. Someone would come in and offer him mid-level or more type money, I think. RFA is so weird. For him, this season, we know what he could do. He's a playmaker on the defensive end. Maybe you'd want him to be a little bit stronger in certain matchups there. Okay, fine. Offensively, it just seems like the Nuggets are putting the ball in his hands a little bit more. Can he make anything happen with that? Can he hit a more consistent clip of his threes? Can that come on real volume? What are the lineups he actually works best in? There's a ton of questions there, but when we're talking about these guys who don't get extensions, I still think he is one of the players that has the highest upside from this group that we're about to talk about.
I don't disagree with that. If he'd gotten, do we know what he was offered? If he was offered anything, do we know if there were good negotiations?
Not been in tune to the specific reporting on it, but I think with the Nuggets and their just cap outlook, I don't even know what would he, unless he was willing to accept 4 for 48 or 4 for 50. I actually would be pretty surprised if they were going to give it to him.
Right, and that was the thing. Because I was actually going to use AJ Green as an example. If he'd been offered an AJ Green level contract, do you think he should have signed that or just kind of waited?
Do you know what's tough about these situations is because if you're looking at what they're going to do for him in Denver, for the most part, you could say, I don't know that he's ever going to be more than a $12 to $15 million player a year. But you also have to measure that as, well, how much of that comes down to there's Jokic and Murray and Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson's there now, and Christian Braun. And you could also say, well, they'll probably trust Bruce Brown to be more of just the pseudo guy with the ball in his hands when Jamal Murray's not off the court. We come back to how many times I asked you some version of this question throughout the podcast. It comes down to circumstance versus potential, and how do you meld those two together? I would think, though, I think he can be a more valuable player than AJ Green. And AJ Green does something that is just so valuable, so bankable in the NBA. I acknowledge I'm stepping out on a limb there because Peyton Watson's been so inconsistent, especially on the offensive end. But man, the physical tools are there, and I've talked to Adam Mares of DNVR about this for at least the past 2 years running. I love the idea of seeing him more on the ball, and I'm wondering if David Adelman is going to continue to make that a staple of what the Nuggets do in some of their secondary lineups.
it'd be super interesting, and it'd also be a way to develop him and like accelerate that entire process to a point where he might come in to the summer next year and look at a significantly larger market for whatever that market is.
I do want to ask you, though, as the Nuggets, it's not because I want to propose a trade. It's because I want to know what you think, how the Nuggets should value him, and also just what this roster needs. If the Bulls just said, we'll do Zeke Naji and Peyton Watson for Ayo Dosunmu, is that something the Nuggets... Ayo's on an expiring contract himself.
Yeah, he is. So I have, for a pretty long time, wanted another guard specifically with the Nuggets because I think they're a little short in that department. Ayo Dosunmu specifically is like porn for the Nuggets. Can play both guard spots, got good size, can play off and on the ball. He never stops moving. He's just so smart. I think he's an underrated shot maker. I think his IQ is generally underrated. I think he, as a result of playing in Chicago, a team that you should ignore for the most part, he's flying under the radar. I think his fit with Jokic, his fit with even Aaron Gordon, who takes away that some of the physicality there, that would be fun. I mean, I probably do it if I'm the Nuggets because of that specific need and because I'm title hunting.
You probably, to get off the Zeke Naji deal, I think you almost have. And it comes down to how much do you believe in Peyton Watson? And if you do believe in him, you then have to ask, well, are we willing to pay Peyton Watson? He is, I would also say, as high as I am on him, of players who have signed, of players who didn't get an extension, he's among the most difficult to even, what would you give him? I might say I like him, but if you're going to come to me and say, oh, is that going to be worth, Dan, for 70 to you? I don't really have a good answer.
No, me neither.
Now we're on to Jalen Duren, Mort. Jaden Ivey.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Poor Jaden Ivey. God.
Jaden Ivey doesn't get an extension. I don't know how he was supposed to get an extension. The limited sample last year because of the leg injury, and then he's dealing with the right knee injury when underwent arthroscopic surgery, I believe. This is one of the toughest situations to figure out because it comes down to, do you trust him as a long-term piece in Detroit, and how are you supposed to figure out the answer to that question when he's not going to finally play again alongside Cade until when? And then after that, it's, well, now the sample's been so abbreviated, what do we take away from it? I think the most the Pistons can hope for is he comes back, he's good, and they're in the playoffs, and they really get to see how he works inside that pressure cooker. But even then, man, they're kind of making what's a pretty big decision about their future off just what's not an ideally sized sample.
Yes. Well, I don't know what kind of feedback you're looking for me right now. You kind of just wrapped it up yourself.
All right. So if you don't have any strong thoughts on Jaden Ivey, now we'll move on.
I will say this. I mean, I think when it comes to Jaden Ivey, I think we have this tendency to put him into like the too injured camp because of last year, and now we're seeing something here early on this year, which is super frustrating that he just had that right before the start of the season. What we've seen, though, over the first 2 years, I think we have to acknowledge that one of those seasons was under Monty Williams, which was, him jerking him in and off and out lineup and just didn't work. It wasn't a great fit. And then we have to look at his rookie season, which was his rookie season, primarily without Cade Cunningham, who was injured a fair bunch that year. So, in terms of, the small sample size with him and Cade, that's one thing. But, I also just think he's never really been timed all that well in Detroit. So, are we punishing him for that a little bit by just... if you're Detroit, are you basically saying, oh, well, we haven't seen you play, not realizing the realities of the events that occurred? I don't know. I would have been open-minded to an extension. Let me just put it that way. If they had locked him up to something like 480 or something.
I wonder if he would have signed that.
Yeah, probably not, honestly, because he's been so super productive. That's a fair point. But if he had signed something, I wouldn't have sat there and gone, oh, that's premature. Like, no, like, the guy has played almost 200 NBA games. He's been super productive when he's played. There's something on ball. There's something off ball. I think he developed as a shooter as his career has progressed. Like, is he a knockdown shooter? And is he, someone who can go in and hit 90% of the free throw line? No, not yet. Young, explosive, got a knack for scoring the ball, and Detroit just so desperately still needs that. So I wouldn't have been against an extension whatsoever. He's going to be one of those guys who I hope will actually get some attention next summer. But we all know what's going to happen here because no one's really going to have cap space. Like, we're going to hear something from Shams any day now where 9 teams are expected to have cap space at the start of next summer. And when it comes down to it, it's like 3.
Yeah, I think 10 was the number Bobby Marks had given a month or so ago. And I wrote something on why, no, it's not going to be 10. It's going to be half that at most.
Right.
And Jaden Ivey, though, he's working. It does feel like we're overloaded with guards. And I think specifically, look, you want to read into the shooting last year. I think that's fine. His 2-point percentage is ticked up in each of his first 3 years. He played in 30 games last year. And so I don't think we get to say, 41% is the new baseline from 3. And you want to see more of that. And the other thing we still don't know, and I acknowledge what you said about how his role has been inconsistent in Detroit when you look at his availability. First year there is with Monty Williams. But what I think is really concerning too is you have to answer the question of, we know he can play off Cade. What is the ceiling of him as the leader of your secondary units? Or do you think that you need to always have a Karis LeVert? Does Asar Thompson and or Ron Holland need to be that guy? If you don't view, and I don't know that I view Jade, this is the thing I struggle with the most with Jade. If you ask me whether the shooting is real, I'm probably just going to say yes. It's can you lead? And no, you're not going to close with these lineups, but can you be someone who anchors those units without Cade? I have some skepticism there, and I probably have more faith in an Asar Thompson doing that. I don't know what you pay that player, especially so now you have that major left leg injury in the rear view, and now you've undergone arthroscopic surgery on your right knee.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so fascinated to see what he looks like when he comes back.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, after teasing it for the past 12 minutes, we are on to Jalen Duren, who, Mort, if you were trying to pay him based exclusively off what has happened during the regular season so far, what would you be willing to give him?
off this regular season? God, that is a good-ass question. I mean, the guy has a 30.1 PER currently. Look,
Well, I was going to say the offense has been they're shooting 17 points better from 3 without him on the court. The rim percentage is going up.
We can't deny what he's doing when he's on the floor, though. Like, his raw numbers, he's one of the best rebounders in the league currently, and like his own offensive production has at least ticked up. Like, we've got to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I just not doing ton as a playmaker this year. He is. That's why I asked you the questions. I have no idea. His block numbers for him are just bonkers, but they're playing him less too. I think we've reached the point where it just feels like, and we've probably been here, but I just feel better about Isaiah Stewart being on the floor for the Detroit Pistons.
He's 21. I understand 200 plus games in the league. I get it. We're looking at over 5,500 minutes of NBA experience. Yes, I thought he'd be further ahead in his journey, rather. I thought he'd be further ahead. He hasn't been. The defense especially has been pedestrian is probably the kind word.
What if fouling this season was a skill? I feel like he's been pretty good at it.
Yeah. He's very, very good at fouling. You can be such a dick sometimes.
They're all jokes. I don't dislike Jalen Duren as a person or a player. He was one of the ones, though.
21-year-old.
You can't. I'm really not trying to pick on a 20-something kid, but he was. And I said this about Jaden Ivey, and the Pistons had both of them. That I don't know if it'll get a lot easier leading into the offseason, but when you were talking about negotiating these extensions, 2 of the hardest candidates just in the league, bar none, to get a read on what their value is.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's also why I'm stalling, because honestly, my opinion of Jalen Duren after 3 seasons entering here, year 4, I just don't have an idea of what is it that I can like grab and hold on to, knowing that this is going to be a thing for the future. Like in his second year, when we saw that uptick in production, we saw him hit 79% of the free throw line, at a decent volume. We were like, oh, okay. We started seeing like the elbow passing. We started seeing like more of the offensive repertoire, coming up. And we were like, okay, so year one, more defensively inclined. It was rookie year, young rookie, no less. Like year 3, that's probably where he's going to put it all together a little bit more and make these incremental improvements. And then instead we saw, a less potent offensive version of him. The defense never really got better. And yet I still can't shake the feeling this is a 21-year-old big man. Big men take time. He still has a touch. He still has something that he can do around the basket. He's still supremely athletic. He's still built like a Greek freaking god. He's still someone who eventually will probably mold into something. But like, even not knowing the extension number, Dan, I don't even know what the restricted free agency number is. I have no freaking idea. I have no idea. Are we looking at slightly more than the non-tax MLE, or are we looking at 20% of the cap? I don't know. Flip a coin.
He's had this is the Jalen Duren start to the season. He had the game where he goes off against the Celtics, but then he just has, it feels like, all these other red flags. He's averaging 6 fouls per 36 minutes.
Yeah.
Dude is all over the place, and I don't know what to make of him or his value still. And I said a lot of really probably inflammatory things about him after his first season, and it's gotten so hard to evaluate him from there. And he did improve. I think JB Bickerstaff has talked a lot about this. He improved a lot defensively as the year went on last season. I don't know how much of their defensive their best performances to ascribe to him. I think Isaiah Stewart is just, I've mentioned this at the top, I'm just repeating myself. He's the guy I kind of just trust more at this point. I don't know what that says about this situation or what. And you're right. Like, yeah, you can look at the numbers. I didn't even realize what he was averaging until we started this conversation. Like, the box score numbers are legitimately absurd.
He's preposterous. Yeah.
I just sometimes wonder, it's one of those situations to where the Pistons look like they can make more sense without him on the floor. And that's just such a weird spot to be.
Well, I mean, he's a lob threat too. You need to have someone playing that role next to Cade, right? I mean, you can't. I love Isaiah Stewart, but, and I'm not saying he can't grab lobs. Of course he can. Duren is more athletic. He's stronger. He takes up more space in the paint. I do think the threat of Duren as a passing target for Cade is also something that defenses are geared into, because they know Cade is like 6'6", 6'7", and can get into like the paint. He can go get paint touches. So they're extremely worried about that little quick drop off for Duren or the quick pass over the top. That threat, it has to be further developed. Like, he will need to play in order to invest in that future. Like, I understand what you're saying, but I also don't think that Detroit necessarily should be just going into this season with the mindset of, oh, we need to win as much as last year. We need to build, like aggressively so. You can afford, in my opinion, to say, okay, we had a great year last year. We made it to the playoffs. We want to chase that still, sure, but it still should not come at the expense of these players that we are trying to develop. Because if you undermine the development of Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey, honestly, what do you have at the end of the day? Where do the Pistons go from there?
They have Asar Thompson, Ron Holland.
They do have Asar Thompson. Okay, is that enough?
Is what they have now enough?
No, but what I'm saying is, if you kind of disregard 2 major prospects and projects, which they still are to some extent, yeah, you can lean into Asar Thompson, who's great, by the way. We still don't really know what Ron Holland is. I think we agree. Like, they have a bunch of 30-year-olds who are not going to be there long term. So, like, you kind of need to go into this experiment. You kind of need to lean into it.
I definitely don't disagree with that stance, which is why the Jaden Ivey follow-up injury is such a bummer, because it bilks them of the chance to get more information on this group. And they're going to have, I mean, those are the 2 decisions at the end of the season. You don't want to say it's going to define their future, but that's a huge chunk of deciding where they're going into the future. And you had asked, what's the number? going into RFA right now. I think if I was pragmatically speaking, I do feel like Jalen Duren probably in the $20 to $25 million range would feel about right.
Yeah, that seems fair.
It's just his highs and lows are just so extreme, I think, is when I was tripling over my words. It's just, they're so extreme. And when he strings it together for a longer period of time, it's, this is, $30 million a year for Jalen Duren doesn't seem absurd. I tend to lean towards the lower end of the spectrum, but I think that I'm just a creature of habit. And so the instability, the turbulence of how he plays, like what he delivers, and then just sort of knowing, you made a great point about just the vertical spacing that he provides you as a screener and the lob threat with Cade. I think that is super important to have. And I tend to kind of fall in love with bigs where it's Isaiah Stewart. I mean, he's the better defender, so I don't want to say he doesn't have a dominant skill set, but I tend to like guys who, rather than they are dominant at these one or two things where it feels like they check more boxes. Isaiah Stewart feels like he checks more boxes, but I think a fair criticism is, can Isaiah Stewart check those boxes for an entire year playing this heavy minute workload where he's doesn't get to basically split it with a Jalen Duren right now. Detroit's in such a, the word is fascinating. They're in such a fascinating situation both now and moving forward. Our next guy who did not get an extension is Tari Eason. Referenced him a little bit on Jabari Smith. How you feeling about him, Mort?
So I'm a huge Tari Eason fan. I love what he gives you. I understand that the shooting is not where, he's not a natural three-point shooter is probably the best way to say it. Defensively, I'm involved. I also think just transition-wise, he's such a target. I just fed hell over heels when he was at LSU, just of the way he would produce on a permanent basis. I think that's carried over. The rebounding, the activity level, the athleticism. I think there's so much to his game that I've just been waiting for him to get a full-time starting role, even if it wasn't in Houston. Now that he doesn't have that extension, we'll see what the future holds. I think he's going to be so important for the Rockets moving forward because, having a guy coming off the bench to play two positions, like both forward positions, and offer that type of defensive flexibility, the transition target, the athleticism, the strength. I think he's crucial for a team that wants to win a championship. I think he's that type of guy. So I was surprised, but I also understand that they have a cap situation that they need to manage. So we'll see. But I do think that there should be several teams eyeing him next summer, even if it's through restricted free agency, where they're looking at that situation, monitoring and saying, look, we're interested.
Yeah, he's the only thing I really have to add is the phrasing on when he didn't sign an extension. I think it was from the Houston Chronicle where it was the lack of an extension doesn't necessarily signal his departure.
Right.
And that was, I just clocked it. It was just a weird way to frame it because in theory, sure, but we all sort of know that. I'm curious. I guess for me, it comes down to, and there are obviously things that I need to dig into more into their payroll. That would be an interesting discussion to have. Their payroll can change between now and next summer. These trade restrictions are going to lift. They could move around money if they really want to. But are they willing? Are they trying to be a team that doesn't go into the second apron and they have $38.2 million in space when they have 9 players under contract, not including Tari Eason as one of them? Are they looking to avoid how much are they willing to spend on this roster? I think getting the Kevin Durant number, checking in at whatever it was below his max, what was it, 16, 19 million below what his max salary could have been, that will certainly help them and give them more wiggle room there. But I'm curious if they look at their roster, if it's largely the same and say, all right, Ahmed Thompson's now up for an extension. We've paid, the contracts might be reasonable or easy to justify, but Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith, how much can we actually give to Tari Eason? Because if he's a $20 million a year player, is this a team that wants to give that to, what is he I echo everything you said defensively, but is he going to be a part of their closing unit? How many minutes is he actively going to play? And then what do you view him as? You mentioned his strengths offensively, but during, I guess, most offensive units, he will be, the fourth option? He's never really going to be higher than that.
Yes. No, and that is fair. That is the one thing that he still needs to develop. I thought last year coming off the bench when he and Ousmane Thompson were coming off the bench together and they had that duo and they just won them games. That was like they built themselves an identity through, defense, turning defense into transition offense and that sort of thing. There was never really a heavy emphasis on half court execution on behalf of Tari Eason. And I would be curious to see if there was a system out there and a coach out there who saw something in him and went, okay, I can invest something in terms of him in a half court setting, because I don't think he's, just an energy player. I think that does a disservice to his talent. But I also, we can't sit here and act like he's perfect whatsoever. He does need more reps in the half court. He does need to prove that he's worth the squeeze in that situation. So again, remains to be seen. I would love him like virtually everywhere, though.
This is just a quick answer. Do you think the Rockets they're about, let's say, $17 million beneath the tax without Tari Eason on the books next year? I think that's across 9 players. Do you think that they're going to be willing to go into the tax next year, that they're going to want to delay that foray, knowing that the Ousmane Thompson deal is coming down the pipeline?
Well, I mean, eventually, if you're expecting, it depends on how long do you expect to be in the tax, right? Because you also want to avoid the repeater tax.
Well, that's my point. It's like you don't want to start. I kind of think they might not want to start the clock next season.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're good enough, you just do it. And there's a chance that they're not going to have Fred VanVleet this year in all likelihood, but we could look at them and say they're kind of a top 17, floor general type away from just being one of the foremost contenders.
Do you think they would move off of Dorian Finney-Smith to free up that salary slot?
Just to help contribute to staying under the tax and re-signing Tari Eason. Yeah. I mean, if you're asking me who should be more important in this team moving forward, it's not even a question. It's right. Tari Eason for sure.
Obviously.
The other thing, what's hard to talk about the guys without extensions is so much depends on not what they do this season, but how this season ends. If the Rockets just look like they're so close, they might just go into the tax, pay whatever, and if they decide to get out of it mid-year, they might look at, if you were talking about Jabari Smith Jr., what if they decide to make some type of a consolidation trade, and then it's easier to keep Tari Eason? There's so many different directions this could go. I don't know what the number is for me, but if you paid him more than $20 million a year, I don't know that I'm batting an eye at it. Right. If you're not willing to, I think a lot of it comes down to some murkiness on his offensive value for sure. The game against OKC was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. He leveled off a little bit after that. But if you don't want to pay him that, I guess it maybe speaks to, we don't think he's ever going to shoot better than like a 34, 36% guy from 3, and how many minutes in games do we trust him to be available to play?
All I know is if he gets back and they somehow lock him into something like 460 or something ridiculous, that would be such a major asset for them book-wise moving forward.
Well, I'm going to need to see if he signs for basically the mid-level or less. I'm going to need to see his medicals. I don't need to see them, but I'd like to know what do they know that we don't know?
Right. Honestly, if the Spurs didn't have that many, shooting questions, that's the guy I want.
No, that's an embarrassment of riches. They've got Steph Castle and Wemby and Carter Bryant and Luke Cornett. They don't need any more help there.
Still, that is the power forward I want there as Harrison Barnes' replacement, if anything.
Bennedict Mathurin, you knew he wasn't going to sign an extension because of what his role was going to be this year.
Obviously,
without Tyrese Halliburton.
Yes,
look, he's hurt because everybody on the Pacers is hurt as we talk about this. I recognize more and more the value of what Bennedict Mathurin can do as a change of pace guy. What I continue to struggle with is what does he, even if he balls out this year, how do you evaluate that against, we are still Tyrese Halliburton's team?
that is, I think, you and I have talked a little bit about this before when we were talking about like guys who could blow up. It's such an interesting wrinkle to that whole conversation, because you can't really use the numbers he's going to put up this year in a vacuum, at least, because you're right. He's not going to get the on-ball reps. He's not going to get the same opportunities there. This year's probably not going to tell us a lot about his off-ball tendencies, capabilities, how he'll play off of lead guards. So Yeah, that's a pretty good ass question. I mean, do they perhaps even wait until like the trade deadline if he's averaging freaking 26, 27 points per game at the age of 23 and try to sell high? Like just to say, okay, we're building up an asset. Like I'm not ruling anything out at this point because you're right. It like how can you justify going into the summer if he's averaging like all NBA numbers and then just kind of lowball the hell out of him? You can't justify that.
I think my bold prediction would be is I don't think Bennedict Mathurin's going to be on the Pacers next year. And I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on Bennedict Mathurin having a bad year, just that they're either going to think he doesn't fit their style or he's not going to fit what they want to do for what he's going to cost them. Right. I think, though, if he defends at a relatively good level, rebounds anywhere near like he did in the opening game of the season, and is going to continue to draw those free throw opportunities. Maybe you can at least see the 3-point efficiencies there, which is it's one of those harbingers where it's, I think maybe he would be able to scale down. That's probably the best bet of whatever he does this year, you reading into it and saying, okay, he got a lot more touches, was a lot more involved in the offense. They played a lot more, I want to say his way, but he had more freedom in the half court. Let's invest in him because we think that we've seen enough signals where if he's able to do this in a higher volume role, imagine what he can do alongside. And Tyrese Halliburton doesn't receive enough credit for this. Super scalable. You don't want him to have to adjust his game, but like he can make some tweaks to like the way that he can move around off the ball does in theory help you like incorporate a higher usage version or a more Bennedict Mathurin-y version of Bennedict Mathurin. So, but this is, wow. First of all, let's hope he stays healthy because everyone on the Pacers is banged up right now. But he's had a lot of eye-opening moments through his first 2 games of the season.
We're also being a little unfair because like we're basically assuming, he's only got this year. Technically, with Achilles injuries, you're probably not just looking at the 1 year, right? Like you're looking at the 1 year from Halliburton where he's presumably off. Then he's got to get back and get like reacclimated, get his legs under him, get that full level of trust back in his body. So you're probably looking at a season and a half, which could be an interesting way to sort of explore that backcourt relationship a little bit more. Like as Tyrese is coming back and getting reacclimated, that's where Bennedict Mathurin can take over more of the offense, handle more of the scoring burden. Perhaps that's a way for those two to calibrate and then figure shit out.
But how much you want to pay him when that's going to be viewed still as more of a, I don't want to call it a gap year then, but if you think it's a Tyrese Halliburton transition year, are you going to be willing to give him 25, 30? And also, I don't view him as the same as a Jalen Green or a Cam Thomas, but he is kind of looped into that subset of guards who are not considered wings, but not considered primary or necessarily even secondary playmakers. So then how do you pay them? They feel like strictly twos. And I think that Indiana does a good job extracting more than just strictly shooting guard type role out of him. But those guys are getting, it seems like, harder to pay, or teams seem inherently down on them. So let's say they keep him through this season, and he's not going to be, I would assume he's not averaging as much as he did through his first 2 games, but he's 20-plus, good efficiency, getting to the foul line, puts pressure on the basket, shooting okay
plus
from 3.
Rebounder.
Rebounding is, let's say that's come up. He's defended at least relatively well. I'd just be curious as to what the market would even be set at him. Are we looking at another situation where it's, I think you could say this with Quentin Grimes or say this with Jonathan Kuminga to use the most recent examples. We know those guys are valuable or that there's upside there. Nobody was still willing to pay them. And in Quentin Grimes' case, his own team wasn't willing to pay him.
Well, okay. So I hear you. I agree with you. But I will say it's sort of different than from the Jonathan Kuminga situation, at least, because Kuminga got jerked around a lot. If Mathurin has like a full year of like a very set role and like he's producing at a level that is, let's say high 20s in the point production, like we saw Kuminga for years, he'll put up 18 and 7 one night and put up like 2 and 3 the next, right? Like the level of inconsistency with Kuminga was at least very prevalent. If that is not the case with Mathurin, I probably would be inclined to just say, well, he's better. Because consistency is just that much more valuable.
The next guy, I think we might need like 20 minutes to talk about him. Ousmane Dieng, Mort. Were you shocked as I was that he didn't get an extension?
I'm shocked he's still on the Thunder, so like good on him.
Does he finish the season on the Thunder? What do you think?
I don't think so, no.
They normally do tend to get rid of those guys that they're not going to keep. I just want to throw them in there. I still do love Ooze. I'm just not doing anything to warrant that love. It's not being reciprocated with his play. Mark Williams, though, Mort. I don't think he was going to get one just because he came over from Phoenix, and even if he stayed in Charlotte, one, they didn't want him. They've made that clear twice over now. But two, you have to see if he could stay healthy. What is his... How do you even try to begin to evaluate him?
You don't. That's the thing. You don't. I mean, look, the injury thing alone it's just such a huge issue, such a huge red flag, which is a shame because I really like Mark Williams. I thought that despite the injury concerns, despite the fact that defensively he didn't project us, all of that, just having such a big physical presence on the floor who could somehow, some way get shots up around the rim and do something. I thought that was insanely valuable. Apparently, NBA teams just do not agree with me, which is fine. So, like, what is his value right now? I have no freaking clue. If he's going to be the backup center in Phoenix all year long, we're probably not looking at starter money going into next season when you compound that with the injury factor.
They're also, and maybe this is, they do it out of an abundance of caution, but the right knee injury management, always just seeing that makes me a little queasy.
Yes.
I'm going to make you pick right now. Does he get more or less than the non-taxpayer mid-level?
Less.
Next year. Less? I think I'm with you.
Yeah.
Next up.
The thing is, that could be a steal, though.
It could, but we said the same thing about Robert Williams III a lot of the times, too.
Oh, that's depressing. That was the depressing name to bring up. Okay, yeah.
And honestly, RW3's peak, just for what he was able to do defensively, I know Mark Williams has had better counting stats at point, but Robert Williams III was a more intriguing, not as big, of course. We'll see how many games he plays in, but you're right. Like, what is his actual, let's say he even stays healthy. If it's in a moderate minutes role and they're managing, that's going to impact his value. Just another incredibly tough case study. And the other thing, too, is I think he's in the bigs where you look at a Jalen Duren. We're going to talk about another one of these bigs, although he might be graduating from that. I don't think there's like a line of demarcation for bigs now to where it's unless you're a star or you're a floor spacer, it feels like teams might not know how to value you. And Mark Williams kind of falls into that. And if anything, he's harder just because of the defensive weaknesses that he's shown. Next up, we have Jeremy Sochan. Mort, how you feeling about him?
Well, Dan, we talked about him before we started recording, and it seems as though we both had completely forgotten about the young man. Just forgotten he existed on the Spurs. That's probably not a great sign.
No, and it's especially now that they have Luke Cornett there, and it's who would you rather see play alongside Wemby, Luke Cornett or Jeremy Sochan? It's really not even the things that Jeremy Sochan can do defensively, I appreciate. And I also think that they found something with him sort of being utilized as this play finisher on offense, maybe being able to do stuff in transition. But if he's doing that, like a lot of the play finishing, then that's just something else that Wemby can't necessarily do. And so I want Wemby either alongside a quirky front court partner like a Luke Cornett or someone who's just going to space the floor around him if it's going to be in a Harrison Barnes.
Right. No, I agree with you in entirely. And Sochan, to his credit, like he is a good player. He does have a tendency to, occasionally put up some counting stats where you're kind of double checking yourself and going, oh, he actually did that. That's pretty impressive. And he'll have games, especially last year, although that was a sort of injury-plagued year. He was in and out of the lineup all year long, I felt. Where he got closer into the basket, where he took smarter shots around the rim. We saw his 2-point conversion rate, if memory serves, jump up significantly. Like, there was more of like an interior slashing game to him. So, like, there's an element of scoring touch there, just not the specific scoring touch that the Spurs need from him. And that's where things sort of get a little murky. Because if he doesn't offer you what you need, how can you move on from that?
It's tough too, because if you're going to be dealing with at least one guard, let's say, that has some limitations on his range. I know what Steph Castle can do off the ball, everybody, I get it. And he is what is he averaging, like 4.8 3-point attempts in the time that he's played this year? But that adds another wrinkle into the equation there.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you this, Mort. Of these three players, rank them in terms of the likelihood that they are in San Antonio next season. Harrison Barnes, who's a free agent, Keldon Johnson will be going into the final year of his contract, and Jeremy Sochan.
I don't think any of those three players are in San Antonio. Did you say next summer or trade deadline?
Rank them in terms of likelihood that they're on the Spurs next season.
Well, I mean, I think all are gone with certainty.
Okay, but who's most likely to still be there?
Harrison Barnes, if anyone.
The free agent. I probably just would have went with Keldon Johnson because he's under contract then.
No, he's such a great trade chip. I think they do love him though. He's a great teammate. He's one who really lifts like the locker room up and whatnot. But they understand he's a great contract to move off of. So like and Sochan, I look, he's the least likely to remain if we're going down that route. I don't think.
Yeah.
But Barnes, like if you put a gun to my head and said, you know, which one of these guys could have a chance in hell of sticking, it's probably Harrison Barnes. But I think all three are going.
Is there any team that would interest you as a Jeremy Sochan spot?
That's a good question. That's actually a really good question. I hadn't thought about like a specific team. So like who needs playmaking for? Yeah.
I was gonna say Boston would be interesting. With the way they like to run their offense, there's normally plenty of space on the floor for that.
You want Jeremy Sochan to take 500 threes in the season?
No, think about the lanes that'll be open for like slashing or driving with him.
Yeah, because we definitely haven't seen Boston waste a ton of those opportunities by just jacking up a three anyway when driving lanes opened up. No, I'm kidding. I see the vision. I do. It's interesting. I don't hate it. I wonder. Again, it depends on the money, and I don't think they'll have any of it. He would be interesting on the Knicks, I feel, as sort of like a when Towns is forced to play center situation if Mitch isn't there.
When Towns is forced to play center when that's his natural position.
No, you know what I mean, like a defensive center situation. You want someone who can like roam around and do some of the dirty work.
The problem with that is you're getting if you don't have Mitchell Robinson, I get it. But if you have Mitchell Robinson, then it's okay between Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, and so you're getting so far away from ever fielding 5-out lineup. So if Towns is your center, yeah, if Towns becomes the default center, I think you having a Sochan and an Anunoby on inside the same rotation would be good. What about? Well, they just don't have the spacing, but they do. He feels like a quirky guy who'd work IQ wise too. Golden State.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Sort of like a Draymond, continuation.
Yeah, that would be honestly. They're just trying stuff at Brooklyn. That's someone who will play him at least. You want to know the depths of his skill set. Brooklyn would be the spot to go. That's probably enough on Jeremy Sochan, though.
I think it is.
We have two more names. Ochai Agbaji, sneaky valuable last year when you look at what he was doing defensively and how he shot the three ball. Where are you at with him?
Backup wing, ultimately speaking. I don't think he is, a full-time starter in this league, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have value. Like, I think he's one of those wings who can, like a true wing, not stuck at a 2, not stuck at the 3. I think he can play both positions. And that has value. I think he's a guy you can trust to make defensive plays. I think he's a guy you can trust to have a certain baseline offensively. I think his athleticism is a bonus. Whenever I watch him play, I keep thinking, like he's 22, 23, and then you realize, oh no, he's actually 3 years older than that. He's like approaching his prime. And that's kind of when I fall into that trap of going, he's got so much, remaining potential left in his tank, which he probably does not, if we're being real. And that's going to affect like the monetary value. So I'm actually going to ask you, like, what do you think is a contractual like parameter that he would fall into that makes sense for everyone involved?
Contractual parameter, I was going to say, doesn't he kind of feel like his era's Dorian Finney-Smith? You're not going to get much more out of him on offense than if you want. I know Dorian Finney-Smith sometimes had the driving to his repertoire. But like Ochai Agbaji, I just look at someone as, you mentioned he kind of has a baseline on offense. In terms of his skill set, yes, but when you kind of still don't know, do you trust the three to go down? As you would like that baseline to be higher, because then you just know we have someone who's going to compete defensively, can guard up and down the positional spectrum, and make threes. And right now, I think he checks two of those boxes. If I'm trying to put a dollar amount on it, I think I would roll the dice on like a close to non-tax mid-level to him. Like 14, 15 a year feels reasonable. But the question would be, would you go a full 4 years on that? Where it's 4 and 56 or 4 and 60?
3 years and the team option?
I would love that contract. Honestly, for him, though, and I said this before, I don't like to boil it down to this. It really does come down. We know what he is defensively, I think, and we know what he can be offensively. The question is, can he just be it? And that is make threes. He can't be someone who's hovering around 33%. He doesn't do enough, like Herb Jones, as an example. Does so much more defensively than Agbaji, and even more offensively, to where it's, you live with that. Agbaji can't be one of those dudes on the offensive end.
I agree.
Our final player, Mort, he's pissed. He wants you to know he's pissed. He didn't get an extension. Walker Kessler.
Mm-hmm. I've been weirded out by this whole situation for a while because he found himself in trade rumors all the way back to
his rookie season, probably.
Right. But like they intensified a great deal at the trade deadline in February, right? I feel as though that was like the point where it started to feel like, are they like they haven't really, unlike like Utah fans can correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't feel like I ever saw something where they went out and like went to bat for him. Or I really said like, look, we can shut this down. He's sticking with us. So I wonder if there's like several things involved here where one, it's like, hey, where's the commitment to me financially? And also, where's the trust? Like, why aren't you, talking about me as someone who can stick around the franchise? And if those are indeed some of his concerns, I get it. That's fair. This is a 7'2" guy who defensively, we talked about Jalen.
Rim protector. Yeah. Just a monster rim protector.
We talked about Jalen Duren and Detroit earlier. If you were to replace Jalen Duren with Walker Kessler, I would feel like a lot more, I don't know what the word is, safe or certain about the Pistons, for example. Like a lot. Just because of the sheer size of it all and like the defensive acumen. And like I would feel more at ease with Kessler than Duren, for example. But for some reason in Utah, they don't necessarily view him like that, which I don't know why. It's not something that I'm privy to. It also seems like a lot of Utah fans are a little bit like confused about why this is developed.
So what I will say is I think that there is some weirdness here because I talked to Sarah Todd of the Deseret News leading into the season and asked if the quote that he had at Media Day about the extension, I didn't actually hear it. So I said, was anything taken out of context? And her response was something to the effect of, it's actually sounded worse than the content of it. And so there is some awkwardness there, but there is part of me that thinks we're overthinking this in the sense that, yes, they probably didn't extend him to keep the trade options open. But the other thing is, Utah's now, this is season 4 of its teardown, right? 3, like Donovan Mitchell's been included. Yeah, season 4 of its post-teardown. Their timeline's all sorts of hazy. And his cap hold, as of right now next summer, is going to be $14.6 million. That's a big difference from whatever he would have gotten. If he would have signed for under $20 million a year, I would have been shocked. I would have guessed he's more likely to sign for 25 plus than 20 or less. And so now you're talking about a big difference. And if Utah is feeling the urgency to improve, having cap space, not necessarily as a vehicle to acquire talent in free agency anymore. We all know how that works, but to facilitate trades. I understand wanting to keep that flexibility open. At the same time, also acknowledging we don't know enough about how good we can be or how much we will be able to or need to fast track this to commit him to that dollar point, because the talent around him, we know what Walker Kessler does best. And his offense, though, is so dependent on those who are around him. And there's a lot of uncertainty in Utah that his value on offense will be more beholden to how these other players are performing. And there's a chance that his contract, had you would sign him for, let's say, 5 years, 100, if they gave him the Keegan Murray deal, there's a chance that could have been viewed disfavorably around the league, depending on how this season plays out. So this is one of those situations where I understand both sides of the argument, to where I absolutely think if you could have locked Walker Kessler down at like 20 to 23 million, you should have done it. But I also understand why he's pissed off about it. I also understand why Utah isn't doing it. My read on it, I do think there's some weirdness. I also do think the Jazz and their fans understand how valuable he is. It's just, does that value align with the window in which they're going to be operating? And also, this could be a situation where, because of what he can do offensively, do they view themselves of having some sort of cap if they decide to give him $25-30 million a year?
I get that, all of it. My thing is the personal relationship here, because you could see that he was pissed. He wanted this. He wanted this type of security contract, whatever you call it. He wanted actively to be there. If you are potentially hurting your player relationship and with someone who you consider your starting center by going, onwards with the cap minutia, then you failed in your communication at the very least. Like, you could have looped him in. Like, again, it's tough because he could have also told you, I want my money now because I'm that good, which fair enough. But at the very least, I hope that they did try to loop him into the idea that, hey, remember that we've seen this before? It was the Kawhi cap hold that actually got them LaMarcus Aldridge back in the day. Like, granted, you're probably 4 years old when that happened. No.
You bring an interesting point, because, sorry to interject, but think about what the Sixers did with Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, exactly.
He was very much aware. Do you think it makes it harder at all, though, to have, for maybe even, let's say they had that level of communication, is it harder for him to get on board with it when Tyrese Maxey, even at the time before he went through that year, I think he won Most Improved Player, right? Before he became a restricted free agent?
He was up there. He was a star, yes.
But he had the cash, he had the status of he'll get max money.
Right.
And Walker Kessler doesn't. And so I'm wondering if that variable adds some fragility to this situation.
That's a really good point, because, again, with Kawhi back in 2015, that same thing, right? It was Kawhi freaking Leonard. So, yes, absolutely. You knew he was going to get the money. It's interesting in terms of what Walker Kessler was asking for, too, because there could be multiple angles at play here. One could be the cap hold angle that you brought up. The second could also be that they are just not aligned on the money as well. So if you're Utah, you're looking at that situation and you're saying, okay, we might be, $5 or $6 million apart per year. That's tough to make up ground on that. At the same time, we're looking at utilizing his cap hold. Like, none of these things are moving in the right direction right now. We have communicated this to him. He's rejected enough the idea he wants his money right now. Now we have to do what's best for us. That, too, is a stance I can respect. But then you also have to realize, by going this route, there's a risk involved. You might have alienated your starting center. You might have. Like, he might be inclined going into the summer and saying, hey, no, you know what? I'm not down with this. I'm picking up the qualifying offer. He might ask for a trade before the trade deadline, like, just to get out of the situation. And those are, those are the gambles that you have to make in professional sports occasionally, if that's what it comes down to. Again, it furthers my point of having quality communication with your players. And here's hoping, because we don't know. We're just speaking out of our asses here, but like, here's hoping that they actually went to him in his camp and laid out their idea.
You have anything else, or are we ready to put a 2-hour bow on? We had a deep dive on the free agency stat.
We did.
Discussion.
We did. It was nice going 2 hours. It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while. This podcast took a while. Mort, can you just tell everyone where they can find you and all the great work that you're doing?
You can find me over at Yahoo Sports. You can find me over at Forbes. If you listen to podcasts, you can find me at the NBA Podcast. And if you're Danish, you can find me at Buzz Repeater. And you can catch me calling games for HBO Max.
Big time over here. Until next time, 1, remember to subscribe to Hardwood Knocks as well, in addition to the NBA podcast. And 2, shout out to the one, the only, still waiting on his rookie extension. Never got it. Still waiting on it. Mr. Frank Ntilikina.